and welcome to No Degree, No Problem. I'm Danielle, a career coach who specializes in helping high quality candidates just like you get high quality jobs without having a college degree. And in today's video, we're going to be talking all about claims adjusting. I was able to get a position as a claims adjuster when I was 22 years old, and I was one of the only people in the building with no college degrees, as well as with no experience in the role. So in this video, I'm going to talk about all about that process, the pay, what the job actually was, some of the pros and cons, where I found the job, and other details like that. So if you want to know about this, make sure you keep watching. But I do want to give a very limited opportunity depending on when you're watching this video, because for some of you, I'm sorry, it may not even be available anymore. But I'm developing a program that can better serve high quality candidates just like you to get those high quality jobs, because I used to be in the exact same position and I found a way to land jobs paying up to 6 figures with things like company unlimited paid time off, company paid health insurance and benefits, and all of those things without having a college education, multiple high paying jobs. And now I'm on a mission to help people just like you be able to do the same thing. So with that being said, if you fill out the survey through the link in the description or the link in the comments, then it will help me tremendously to be able to learn more about people who are where I was and who are struggling to get interviews or get jobs and want to be judged by their abilities and their skills and not their education. So in exchange for you filling out that 15-minute survey, I'm going to be selecting 10 lucky people to hop on a 100% free 30-minute call, and we will be doing a get the interview resume review. So I will reach out to you, ask you to submit your resume if you're one of the people chosen after you fill out the survey, and we'll schedule a 30-minute call, and I will review your resume, let you know some of my thoughts as far as what you may need to do, things you might need to change, and we will talk about different solutions and how I could potentially help you with your problem. And this will be at absolutely no charge, just a thank you for helping me by filling out this survey and giving me this information so I can come up with something that will really be a great solution for people who are in that same situation. So if you want that limited time opportunity to potentially work one-on-one with me as I'm developing this, make sure you stop, look in the description, look in the comments, and fill that survey out right now. Then come back to the video. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way and hopefully you have filled out that survey, I want to thank Avon right up here and Kayleen, I hope I'm pronouncing you guys' names correctly, for asking about this in a previous video where I talked about 6 high-paying jobs that don't require a degree, and this one was on the list. I mentioned that I had this position, and these two, as well as some others, asked some questions. So make sure that you comment, because I do read the comments, and as you see, take video suggestions from the comment section because I genuinely want to serve. So let's talk about how did I find this job. So I found this job on Indeed, and it was a job listing for a claims adjuster trainee. Now, in some states, claims adjusters do have to be licensed, and so how that works for you will just depend on the company and what their policies are, as well as the state that you're in. So for the state that I'm in, which is South Carolina, they do require licensing, and the way that the company that I worked at went about this was they offered me the job, I accepted the job, and then your first 2 weeks of the job were simply studying for the licensing test. You were getting paid, you did come in office, but your entire work was just studying for the test, and they had different study materials and things. You go and take the test, they allowed you to take it up to 3 times that they would pay for it, and if you did not pass after that 3rd test, then at that point they would let you go, but that was very rare. I think they said only one person had ever taken it 3 times and did not pass any of the times, and even after that you can continue trying to take the test out of pocket, but that was just the policies for the specific company that I worked at. I have seen some listings where they will only hire people who are already licensed, and that process is just going to look different depending on your state. For us, it's literally just, I don't even know how much the actual exam was because we didn't have to pay for it. I think it was around $60 out of pocket if you were going to pay for it yourself. And honestly, the exam was pretty easy, not like easy peasy. It was a lot of information, but if you can just memorize the information and take the test, then you'll be completely fine. Now, this is how it goes if you're working for a company. There are 3 different types of claims adjusters. You have company adjusters, which is what I was, which is when you're working for a company. Sometimes they're called staff adjusters. You also have independent adjusters, and independent adjusters work for firms and are hired by insurance companies on a contract basis. And these companies hire independent adjusters to help them process claims more efficiently, and they're only allowed to work for insurance companies. And then you have public adjusters, which is this 3rd category, who basically are freelance adjusters, and they're hired by the policy holder, not the insurance company, and that's also on a contract basis. So you do have most of the time more ability to increase your income if you're working as an independent or a public adjuster. However, even people who have taken this route, most of them will suggest and recommend that you do start at a company to learn the ropes, use their training systems, get some experience under your belt before going at it on your own. But it's definitely a good option, and like I said, it does have the opportunity to be more lucrative. However, don't let that fool you into thinking that the staff or company adjuster makes no money, because I know that's a question you have, and that's what I'm about to answer. How much money did I make starting? Not after any raises or bonuses, anything like that. In starting, I made about $50,000 a year, and we also had bonuses at the company that I worked at, which was a gain share bonus, just depending on how the company did overall that year. That could be as little as a few hundred to a few $1,000s depending on the company that year. So definitely not anything to sneeze at. And depending on where you're at, claims adjusters can make in the six figures, especially in some bigger cities and areas, and also depending on obviously your experience, as well as the longer you work there, that band does increase. And if I would have stayed at the company, then I could have easily gotten up to six figures within 2 or 3 years of working at the company. So it's definitely possible, especially if you find a company that is large enough to give you that mobility to continue moving up the ladder. Another thing that determined a different pay at the company that I was at was the specific field that they have you specialize in. So this is going to depend on your company. Some companies will have one adjuster that works in like all of these different fields or multiple fields. The company that I was at had them separated. I was an auto adjuster. I specifically worked with vehicle claims, and they were pretty much normal vehicle claims. We had a team that specifically did total losses, which is when the car is completely totaled. But I did still get some of those claims. Then we had completely different teams for things like homeowners insurance and claims, and then for property, for theft and fire cases, for boat, motorcycle, all types of things. But again, that's just going to really depend on the company that you are working at. So another question a lot of people have is this a remote position? Is there any work from home opportunity? And the answer is most definitely yes. This is definitely a position that can be done completely from home, but it's really just going to depend on the company that you work at and what their protocol is on that. I started in office, and then by the end, before I left, I was at home. So definitely have options. And then there were people who did hybrid, who would come in about 2 or 3 days a week and stay home 2 or 3 days a week. Now, if you're thinking, well, Danielle, that all sounds great, but what exactly does a claims adjuster do? So I'm going to explain to you what a claims adjuster does the best that I can, and then I'll tell you some pros and cons as well. So basically, you are what this person, this policy holder, has been paying for. Every month, someone pays their premium, they pay their insurance, just in case, well, one, because they have to legally in most states, but also just in case they get in an accident, that they will be protected and will not have to either pay the liability damages, which is the damages of the person that they were in an accident with if it was their fault, or they don't have to pay for their own damages if for some reason the other person doesn't have insurance, or a variety of things. But this is their protection. And so when someone is calling and making their claim, it is so important that they have a great representative who's representing the company well, because if people have a bad claims experience, they will leave more than likely, and that is not what you want. Obviously, you want to keep your job, and because you want to keep your job, you want to make sure that these people have a great experience, and also because you just want to do well in general. So basically, what you'll be doing is when they get in an accident, they pick up the phone and call either sometimes you directly, depending on the company. For us, we had another team of people. Like I said, it was a big company, so we were able to kind of chop up some of these duties, and they took the first call where they documented their, accident location, the name, as much information as they could get, and then it got assigned to one of us, one of the claims adjusters. And so then what we do is we would call the person after they had been in an accident. We try to call all the parties involved. We take interviews, investigate the situation, create scene and maps and things like that. We'd get the car into the shop and get it moved if it was being held somewhere. We would set them up at a rental if they had rental on their policy. We would send the check at the time after the car had been appraised, or send the check to, the person directly or to the company that they had a loan with. And then just make sure that they feel like they have their money well spent, which when we get to the cons, we'll talk about how that can be a con and how sometimes it just doesn't turn out how you want. But that's kind of a part of any job. So if you want to know kind of like a typical day, I would kind of come in, we would check our emails, make sure you respond to that, check any voice messages you have from any customers or other businesses or anyone that has reached out to you. And a big portion of the job, which I'll touch on in a bit, is investigation. So you may have a police officer calling you back, giving you a report, or someone that you called from a gas station to see if you could get any footage from the cameras to get some more details on it, and kind of respond back to those voicemails. And then you want to check your new claims, which are, the things that are coming in and how many claims you get, what your claim load is. Again, it's going to be heavily dependent on the company and what their assigned claim load is and how many people they have on staff and different things like that. You check your new claims, again, call it to those customers, get the interviews, get their cards where they need to be, and that's pretty much it. You're sending out paperwork and calling and interviewing and just going through the process that the company has for you, and you do that until the end of the day, and then wash and repeat. And so another thing is, depending on where you work, like I said, the company that I worked for was big, so we were able to divide tasks up a little better than other companies that I know, where the adjusters were not only taking the first call and working the claim all the way through, but they were also appraising the vehicles themselves. And thankfully we did not have to do that. So make sure you figure out exactly what you will be doing at this specific job, because some claims adjusters do appraise the vehicle themselves, which means they are looking at the vehicle, assessing its damage, and deciding what it's worth, deciding whether it's a total loss or not, deciding what the value of the vehicle is, and how much we would pay that customer if any money is owed to them for the vehicle, depending on their policy and all of that other fun stuff. So now we're going to talk about the pros and cons. So one of my favorite things about the job was the investigative factor. I love investigating. I am so curious and I love asking questions. And in South Carolina, unfortunately, we were one of the top states for fraud. So they really had us focused on grilling the customer, shall I say, and just making sure that this is a genuine situation and not any sort of fraud. We would have people all the time, just crazy calls that I got that someone has 16 bullet holes in their vehicle, and I'm like, we have to find out what happened, and they're like, I don't know what happened. It's like, what do you think? Or we would have someone who said that they hit a deer, but that is not what the damage reflects whatsoever. Someone said they got the car struck by lightning. Just crazy things. And you have to, or of course you have the new people who clearly got in an accident, who called and get insurance, did not report the damage, and are now trying to say that they just got in an accident. It's just a lot sometimes, but it's very interesting. And if you like investigating, if you like calling and interviewing people, asking them the details, putting the pieces together, then this will definitely be a really fun part of the job for you. Another part of the job that I really love is helping customers. You seriously get to be their hero. What you have to understand is that most people do not get in accidents. It's actually not as common as you might believe that it is. And when these people do get in accidents, a lot of them, it's their first one. And depending on what their life circumstances are, it is a life-changing event. If you are dealing with a single mom who, has kids and this is her only mode of transportation, then this is a huge thing that's happening that is causing a lot of problems. And you get to be right there at the front lines, putting out that fire, helping her work through this claim as quickly as possible to be able to get her life back to normal. And the amount of heartfelt thank yous, the amount of teary, just gratitude. And that was really something that just made the job so worth it. Another fun thing about the job was that it was certainly never a bore. Like I said, it had all types of interesting conversations with customers and situations, and claims come up, and at least once a week it's like a different kind of claim that you've never had before, especially at the first couple of years, honestly. So it's definitely interesting. And if you like that, you're gonna have something new going on every day, new people to interview, new cases and claims and things like that, then it'll definitely be an interesting, fun job that keeps you on your toes. Now, let's talk about the cons, because there is a reason why I don't work there anymore. And one of the things that was really hard for me was that it's a very emotionally taxing job. I mean, again, like I said, you're dealing with life-changing events. And so that means that even though it's your job and you deal with these claims every single day, the customer does not get into an accident every single day. So you really do have to be sensitive and understanding to their situations, and be very empathetic as well as efficient, because you do have generally a pretty heavy workload to get through. So you can't spend all day just chatting to the customer. You have to be empathetic and be efficient simultaneously, which can be difficult. And also it can be difficult to leave it at work. It can be very easy to take those things home, to think about, you know, the guy who literally his car ran through a house, or to think about the death claims, which can be another big thing. Obviously, there are people who do die in car accidents, and a lot of times that's really difficult, not only for the obvious reason of, you know, dealing with the grieving family members and all of that, but for the less obvious reason of a lot of times when someone dies in a car accident, it's very unexpected. They don't have all of these things set up in place as far as power of attorneys and trusts and wills and things like that. So when it comes to the vehicle, it can be a very long process to helping the customer who is, you know, the next of kin or whatever of the deceased, helping them figure things out and being able to actually even get the proper paperwork in place to be able to really get moving on the claim. It's just a lot for everyone involved, and it can definitely be emotionally draining to deal with multiple of those claims. And then another thing that I wasn't thrilled about with the job is that it's never really done. You kind of can feel like someone who's on a hamster wheel, and it just depends on your personality type if it makes you feel like that. It did make me feel like that, where you just never really get a feeling of satisfaction and completion. Even when you complete 5 claims, you'll always have 5 more, and that's the continuation of the job. So if you want something like, I imagine that teachers, when the school year is over and the last day it's closed, and you get that exhale where you're like, I'm actually done. But at claims, doing claims, you are never actually done. You're never actually finished, shall I say. You just choose to be done. You have to make yourself stop, because you could end up working forever trying to do the next thing, because there's always the next thing to do. But if you can manage that, then this would actually be a really good job if you can make sure that you're not taking work home, because there are a ton of positives associated with this job, including, you know, the pay. And obviously being able to help actually be impactful on people's lives, and that was probably one of the best things about the job. So another question that Avon asked is, how do you find a good company? And one of the biggest tips that I have for this is to read the reviews and believe them. But there are some things that are major red flags in any job listing, and so I'm going to make a video about that later this week. And if you're past later this week, then here it should be coming up at the end of this video somewhere on the screen, so make sure you check that out. I'll be talking about things that job listings say that may sound innocent or even good, but are actually major red flags, and you should run screaming from those jobs. So before you put in your resume to do claims adjusting, or if you want to talk to me one-on-one about different career path options and have your resume reviewed, then make sure you go ahead and complete that survey. The link should be in the description or in the comment section. Complete the survey and you may be chosen to get that one-on-one where I can review your resume and we can talk about some issues you may be having and create a game plan to potentially get you a job as a claims adjuster or a different high-paying, high-quality job that you can give without having the degree. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to subscribe if this is the type of content that would be helpful to you. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you thought that it was useful, and comment below if there's any questions that you have that I did not answer in this video, as well as any suggestions or recommendations or helpful tips or anything you'd like to learn for future videos. All things career related, especially for those of us who do not have college degrees. I am so glad that I am able to serve you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.